Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome to a review of one of the most surprising and best results of the season for Newcastle last night at Villa Park, a 3-1 victory over Aston Villa. I think it's fair to say that I certainly didn't see this result coming. If you look back at my last video, I was quite pessimistic about the game, given that Newcastle had obviously been beaten heavily by Aston Villa last season. They've gone into this game with one win away from home in the Premier League, and there's been a lot of similar patterns in every single away game that I've seen, in that the Newcastle really succumb to the pressure of opposition teams. They really hand them the initiative and can't really answer. They're very sluggish in games. They don't press coherently. They've really struggled to impact games as well. And against a team like Aston Villa, who play like they do at home, and with their record, obviously 9 wins and a draw at home this season, unbeaten in the Premier League at home since February last year, that's quite ominous. But Newcastle went about it completely differently to the way I thought they would, and they went about it in a way that they have done last season as well, that they did last season. It looked like they were back to their best. They were disciplined in midfield, disciplined at the back, and effective out wide and up front. Really, really, really good away performance. They dominated the ball throughout midfield as well. I thought that Bruno Guimaraes, Louis Miley and Sean Longstaff got the better of John McGinn and Douglas Luiz, and Yuri Tillemans. They didn't really give them a sniff. The thing that I would say about Aston Villa was that it felt like they hadn't learned, despite what Unai Emery said. And Unai Emery, to his credit, was very magnanimous in defeat. After the 5-1 defeat at the start of the season at St James's, he was really, really open about how much he felt like his team had learned from that game, but they didn't learn. They played another high line, played right into Newcastle's hands. Anthony Gordon got in behind. Alexander Isak got in behind before his injury as well. It was like that they were back to their best. And when you consider what they showed in parts against Manchester City, when you consider what they've been through in terms of injuries and fatigue earlier in the season and how they've seemed to have subsided, it's not really a surprise in that sense. But it came from nowhere. Nobody really expected this result from where they were going into it. It's really reinvigorated the season. They're now up to 7th. They are 3 points behind West Ham, admittedly, who have a game in hand, obviously, this week. There's a long way to go in this game week to see where Newcastle are, but after that Man City game, I said Newcastle will get into the top 6, and the point was that they weren't that far off, considering they'd been through that nightmare spell. And if you look at where they are now, that isn't too far off. They're 11 points off Aston Villa, who everyone says has been in a title race this season, which is quite astonishing. So this season is far from over now, especially given that they're through to the FA Cup 5th round, where they'll play Blackburn Rovers at the end of the month. So it's a really, really good position to springboard from. The negative is that Alexander Isak is now injured again. Looks like a reoccurrence of his groin problem. Eddie Howe says it's not too serious, but whether he's back to play against Luton will be quite telling. Callum Wilson will be a doubt for that game as well, so it could be Anthony Gordon through the middle. But I thought Gordon was back to his best. That's a real positive. He looked energetic again. He looked dangerous. He looked willing to run. He looks like he's back to his the Gordon that we saw in the first half of last season, after a bit of a wobble again, probably through injuries and fatigue. Yeah, he was for me the player of the match. But we'll go back and touch upon each of the goals. I think it was very, very effective from. And Newcastle have become super effective from corners. Obviously, they scored one from Dan Burn against Fulham, and obviously 2 from Fabian Schär yesterday. Schär got man of the match probably because he scored 2 goals and almost scored a hat-trick in the second half. But really, I think he was superb at the back as well, and deserves a lot of credit alongside Sven Botman. And then from that second goal, Newcastle carried on, and then obviously Isak goes off, and you think, what's going to happen in the second half? Are Villa going to come out and attack? But Almiron came on, 50% fit, apparently, according to Eddie Howe, because of his illness. All that speculation won't have helped as well over his future, but he came on, set up the own goal for Alex Moreno from Jacob Murphy perfectly, and that was 3-0. And Newcastle didn't really look back from there, except a 10-minute spell where Villa caught them off guard by bringing Leon Bailey on. Bailey then sets up Ollie Watkins, it's 3-1, and then a second later, Watkins runs through and makes it 3-2, or he thinks he does, but he's just offside, and that was a very lucky escape. Newcastle, at that point, looked on the ropes for about 10 minutes. And then credit to Eddie Howe for making the tactical change, bringing Tino Livramento on to see the game out and go into a back 5, which is something that I think Howe deserves a hell of a lot of credit for, because in the sort of difficult spells between this season and at times last year when results didn't go their way, one thing that came back about Eddie Howe was his lack of tactical flexibility, the fact that he didn't seem to have very much of a plan B. It felt like a turning point for Newcastle in that sense. They found their tactical flexibility, they found their energy, and they found their intensity. And yeah, as I say, let's talk about Bruno for a second. He didn't get sucked out of position like he did at Villa Park last season. That was really the root cause of the defeat in that game, was Jacob Ramsey running into the space that was vacated by Bruno. Bruno was much more disciplined. That really, really told. Newcastle will go into Luton on Saturday in very, very good form, in very, very high spirits. They could have Harvey Barnes back. They could have Callum Wilson back as well. We'll touch upon that game when we come back, but it's just a short one from me. Thank you very much for joining me. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what you hear, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.